Well, let's speak of a few different research methods. In the correlational method, two variables are observed to determine whether there's a relationship between them, and often people say relation between them. I think that's the better word. Let's take something silly that might be negatively correlated. And how can I tell it's negatively correlated? Well, from the graph at the bottom, you can see that as one variable goes up, the other goes down. So as people wake up later, their academic performance goes down. It seems reasonable to assume that that could be true. So, and by the way, now, who knows the reason why that may be? This is a tough thing about correlations. Is it the case that sleeping somehow renders a person less capable? Well, that seems unlikely. So maybe it's the case that there's some underpinning third variable, such as personal industriousness. When people sleep in late, they have less of an action plan, and therefore they're less likely to succeed in their studies. Possible. It's hard to say. That's the limit of correlational studies, is that we don't have an explanation. But in this case, we might describe as the wake-up time is hours slept past midnight, where 12 noon is 12 hours slept past midnight, and 10 a.m. is 10 hours slept. Who knows? And then you can see their academic performance is measured by GPA. Now, of course, this is a brutal oversimplification. It's not this simple in life. But we might observe a negative correlation that could tell some sort of story. That's possible. So what I would have here is a negative correlation. Now, by the way, the strongest value that a negative correlation could have is -1. That's the strongest absolute negative correlation that you could possibly have. Of course, the strongest positive is +1. So here are some coefficients ranging from +1 to -1. Let's say I have a high positive one, like, I don't know, height and weight. Although it's not perfect, someone that's 7'6" like Yao Ming has to weigh something. And conversely, some people that are very diminutive or petite are likely to weigh a lot less. And therefore, there's an extreme high positive correlation between height and weight. We just talked about a negative correlation that might be sort of low, in other words, a little bit more diffuse. And you can see there are degrees there of either high or low that are either stronger or weaker. So the two left correlations, the high positive and the high negative, would be pretty close to +1 and -1. Not perfect, because they would all fall on a line if they were perfect. But these are fairly close to the absolute value of 1. Over on the two right panels, those are a little bit more diffuse, as you can see. They would not be so close to 1. So what might be a low positive correlation that's a little bit further from +1? One thing that college administrators have kept up with is the role of exercise in GPA. That students that are getting regular exercise actually do better in school. And the reason that is, even though it might be counterintuitive, because you figure, well, the hours spent exercising are not studying, that your whole person is nourished by the exercise, and you're more buoyant, and you're, I don't know what the word is, but you just feel more healthy overall and tackle your studies with a clearer head, if you will. So the limit of a correlation is the results from a correlational study cannot demonstrate, they can demonstrate the relationship between two variables, but they don't provide an explanation for the relationship. So, for instance, in that study wake-up time example, I'm at a loss to know what the reason for wake-up time being negatively related with GPA is. It could be, it's unlikely to be something physical, right? So it could speak to something like personal industriousness, that people that are really industrious tend to get up earlier and tackle their affairs, where people that tend to sleep in late have less of a game plan. That's possible. So, as it says here, for example, the data in figure 1.4 show a systematic relation between wake-up time and performance for a group of college students, and those who sleep late tend to have lower performance. However, we just don't know what other factors are responsible there, and we'd have to assume that there's some underpinning third variable. Here's another weird one. Years of education, age at birth of first child. So those people that spend more time in school and maybe going to graduate school tend to put their first child off later. if they have children. Is that some sort of, I don't know what the word is. Is there any cause that I can ascertain there? No, it may be practical, it may be philosophical or spiritual. It's hard to say what would cause this relation to reveal itself. It's not terribly obvious. So correlations have their place. I'll tell you a funny one. There's a strong positive correlation between, and by the way, this one was positive, years of education and age at birth of first child. In other words, the more years of education I have, the later or the older I am when I have my first child. You can see a few ladies out there in their 40s. I assume we're depicting women here. The funny one that's positive, if you take municipalities like Duluth, Minnesota, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, what have you, hot weather is, or excuse me, this is it. Ice cream sales are positively correlated with acts of spontaneous violence like road rage. So if you can imagine, on one axis, ice cream sales, the other axis, number of incidents of spontaneous violence like road rage. And then it begs the question, what is there about ice cream that makes people more violent? Or what is it about having committed road rage that makes you want to go to Baskin-Robbins? And of course, neither one of those is true. The underpinning third variable there, of course, would be the hot weather. Hot weather drives poor behavior, as police will often tell you, and very hot weather, above 95. And also, of course, people prefer ice cream in hot weather. So there's a third variable there that wasn't so obvious.